Paulie, please. You're on your own. I never want to see you again.
This is the cruelest thing Paulie ever did. And no, it wasn't murder. Coming up, Paulie might be the real silent assassin. Hugh's love for Tony hides a shocking truth. And the mob? Maybe they're just a bunch of lazy clowns in tracksuits. Plus, Silvio's meltdown was theater, not rage. And Tony's brutal takedown of Janice. That might have been the most honest moment in the whole series.
Oh, how I dreaded this day.
I gave you everything. I gave you a son's love. All under false pretense.
No.
You're a fraud and a phony.
The way Paulie turned on Nucci after learning the truth was brutal. Cruel in a way that was hard to watch. For decades, she'd loved him, cared for him, defended him, cried over him. And once the truth came out, that she wasn't his biological mother, he discarded her like yesterday's leftovers.
No, that's not true.
Don't bullshit me. You've been bullshitting me my entire life.
Really?
It was heartbreaking. He didn't just get angry, he shattered. The man who once thought religious donations were a kind of spiritual bribery suddenly found himself betrayed by the only person he ever truly trusted. And what did he do?
Paulie, please. You're on your own. I never want to see you again.
He lashed out, screamed at her, smashed the television, and left her, sobbing. It was petty, it was ugly, and it was exactly what he would do. But that doesn't mean it wasn't deeply sad. It was. Because at the core of Paulie's outburst was something deeply human. He wasn't just angry, he was disoriented. Every memory and every act of love, every moment of comfort was suddenly in question. For someone like Paulie, whose life had been filled with violence, insecurity, and fragile ego, that kind of betrayal didn't just sting. It shook the foundations of who he was. And yet, he came back.
I don't want to argue.
That quiet scene where he sits beside her on the couch, not saying a word while she watches Lawrence Welk, is one of the most touching moments in the entire series. No grand apology, no dramatic confession, just presence. Just a damaged man sitting beside the only person who's ever truly loved him.
Woman loved you. She fed you. How many times she bailed you out of the can when you were a kid? Huh? Am I right?
It said more than words ever could. In the end, Nucci was still the woman who raised him, who worried over him, who defended him even when he didn't deserve it. And Paulie, for all his flaws, his vanity, his paranoia, his sociopathy, knew that. He couldn't articulate it, but he felt it. That moment of quiet reconciliation was his way of saying it. For a man portrayed so often as heartless and ridiculous, that story arc revealed something rare, his humanity. And it was all the more tragic because of how little he understood it himself. A lifetime of anger, violence, and pride, undone by the soft light of a television set and a mother's silence. Everyone loves Paulie Walnuts, but what if I told you he's the most cold-blooded killer in Tony's crew, and no one talks about it?
Man, your door was open. I bought you something from my mom.
Paulie robs and kills an old woman, just like that. It's one of those moments in the series that hits harder on a rewatch. You might forget how quickly it escalates, how coldly it happens, but it lingers afterward. Because it's not just about the act, it's about the desperation behind it. The episode carries a thick tension throughout. Carmela is lashing out, taking her grief over Furio's disappearance and redirecting it at Meadow. Everyone's on edge, and the show strips away any illusion that these characters are anything close to good. They're not. They're just varying degrees of rotten. Paulie, though, he might be the mold at the bottom of the barrel. The old woman he kills, Min, accuses him of stealing something absurdly trivial. Parker House rolls meant for his mother. He reacts like she pulled a gun. She threatens to call his mother, not the police, just Nucci. And Paulie panics. He knows what that means. His reputation, his self-image, his grip on control, all threatened by a frail, bitter woman with a loud mouth.
Okay? You're a disgrace to your mother. Don't set that thing there.
So he heals her, smothers her with a pillow in a flash of panic, pride, and unspoken resentment.
Where's my rolls?
I don't know, Ma.
Waiter.
Then he robs her. That's the order of things. And what does he do with the cash? Hands it to Tony like it's a peace offering, a sacrament. An envelope stuffed with an old woman's life savings, given over without a shred of guilt. There's no fallout. No one mourns her. She's erased, quickly and cleanly, as if she was never there. That's how things work in their world. It's worth noting, this wasn't about the money, not entirely.
I think certain people starting to wonder where your heart is. People who? Tony?
Paulie was losing standing. His envelopes were light, his connections shaky. He'd been snubbed at Carmine's daughter's wedding, humiliated in front of Tony's inner circle, and shaken after the gossip fallout with Johnny Sack. Killing Min wasn't just about cash, it was about clawing his way back into favor, keeping up appearances, staying useful. And she wasn't even truly his mother's friend. Just another woman Paulie bullied into looking after Nucci. She resented him. Always had.
You were always a little bastard!
Shut up with that fucking mouth!
And in that moment, she said it outright. You were always a little bastard. That's all it took. Of course, it's darkly comic too. A mob enforcer brought low by a box of dinner rolls. A man who claims self-defense against an 80-year-old woman under a crocheted throw. It's so absurd it would be funny if it weren't so brutally bleak. But that's the Sopranos. There are no good people here, just people. Some of them dangerous, some pathetic, most both. Paulie didn't lose his soul in that room. He'd lost it long before. This was just another envelope, another body, another way to stay in the game. Ever wondered why Carmela's dad, Hugh, really likes Tony Soprano? It's not just because he's a mob boss. There's a deeper, more surprising reason. On the surface, Hugh looks like the kind of a man who'd be outraged to see his daughter marry a criminal, a contractor, a family man, respectable. But dig even slightly beneath that veneer, and the answer becomes clear. Hugh not only knew Tony was in the mob, he liked it, maybe even admired it. Tony is charming, funny, generous, and respectful toward him. He brought sausages to family gatherings, gave him a high-end power drill, even gifted him a Beretta shotgun. Not the top-of-the-line export, but still, he was touched.
Hey, happy birthday to you! Got sausage for you!
Tony treated Hugh with a warmth and deference that clearly meant something. For a man often henpecked and dismissed by his wife, Tony's no-nonsense take-charge presence was intoxicating. And let's not pretend Hugh is some kind of ethical paragon.
The minute I met Tony, I knew who that guy was. On my second date, he brought me and my mother each a dozen roses and my father a $200 power drill.
He was cutting corners long before Tony showed up, using substandard materials, ignoring code requirements, doing favors, and expecting them in return. When Carmela was building her spec house, he straight up stole from her. And then acted like she was the problem.
This little strip mall on Route 17 was zoned residential until Tony made a phone call.
Bullshit.
Oh, really, Dad? The contract you got to do with Sparta High for the hurricane repairs while all the other builders were too busy to bid?
Hugh benefited from Tony's connections, both directly and indirectly. The zoning changes, the lucrative contracts, the special treatment, none of it happened by accident. He was more than willing to play the game, as long as he didn't have to get his hands dirty. He knew enough about how things worked to keep a comfortable distance while enjoying the rewards. His family background suggests he was no stranger to that world either. Carmela is a cousin to Christopher Moltisanti, and Tony referred to Carmela's Uncle Eddie, being involved in similar circles. Hugh might not have been in the life, but he was certainly around it, and he understood how to profit from it. As for Tony as a husband and father, by traditional patriarchal standards, he ticked the boxes.
You think we gave AJ too much?
Then you look at Meadow. Same house, same everything. She's doing great.
She takes after you, maybe.
Don't do.
He provided. He gave Carmela a mansion, designer clothes, and a life of luxury. He never laid a hand on her. He showered the kids with material wealth, sent AJ to private school, bought him a car, lined up jobs for him. Whether or not AJ succeeded, spoiler, he didn't, is beside the point. Tony gave him every opportunity.
Go right the hell ahead, because I'm not coming if the man of the house isn't there.
Hugh likely saw Tony as a man's man, someone who handled problems, made things happen, and didn't get pushed around. That was appealing, especially compared to his own domestic situation, where he was routinely steamrolled by his wife and rarely respected. In short, Tony represented everything Hugh admired: control, decisiveness, respect, and influence. Whatever criminal baggage came with that was either conveniently ignored or viewed as the necessary cost of doing business. And at the end of the day, Tony took care of his daughter and gave her a life that was better, at least on the surface, than most. From Hugh's perspective, that was more than good enough. No one wants to say it, but The Sopranos is really about how the mob is just lazy, delusional, and allergic to actual work. A recurring theme in The Sopranos is the mobsters' spectacular hypocrisy, especially their fondness for old-school values like hard work and honest labor, despite being some of the most parasitic figures in their world.
See that church? Your great-grandfather helped build that almost 80 years ago. There's a stonemason here, old man.
Tony Soprano, for example, gives Meadow a heartfelt speech about how her great-grandfathers were stonemasons who built a church, while he makes his living off what he himself describes as a pyramid scheme. The irony isn't subtle. It's practically engraved in marble.
You're not such a fucking citizen when you want a construction bit to go your way, are you? Okay.
But the most on-the-nose depiction of this contradiction is the no-work job. A bunch of guys lounging in folding chairs, eating ice cream, doing absolutely nothing, while the actual workers toil around them. Not a flicker of shame or awareness, just leisure, funded by fraud. It's a perfect visual summary of the show's whole ethos.
Once stuffed mushrooms, the whole fucking planet.
Fuck you, huh?
The smoking mushrooms line adds another layer of absurdity. Bobby Bacalieri delivers it while discussing Native Americans, utterly missing the point of the Columbus Day episode. He equates the mafia's victimization with that of indigenous people, while failing to realize the mafia behaves in a similar exploitative way, just with vices like gambling and extortion instead of mushrooms and land grabs. Also worth noting, smoking mushrooms isn't a real thing. People eat them, or make tea. But Bobby, as always, is confidently clueless. Food in this world is both a comfort and a battleground. Bobby once ate half a tray of manicotti that was meant for Junior, and then acted offended when Junior got mad about it. It's the kind of pettiness that perfectly illustrates how these men view respect and loyalty. Deeply important, but only when they're the ones being disrespected.
Keep this place alive.
So how come we never do?
Buy land, DJ, because God ain't making any more.
Tony's obsession with hard-working Italian ancestors resurfaces in a later season when he takes AJ to see the church his grandfather helped build. He launches into another speech about heritage, pride, and resilience, until AJ calmly asks why they never go to church. Tony is visibly stumped, as if the thought has never crossed his mind. He doesn't see the disconnect between revering tradition and completely ignoring it in practice. Carmela, by contrast, is almost always at church. She lights candles like it's her side hustle. The kids attend a traditional Catholic school with plenty of priests and nuns, where Mass is probably a weekly, if not daily event. Yet the family's Sunday routine is a mystery. Tony clearly doesn't go, and there's no real effort to involve the children beyond tuition payments. The rituals are observed just enough to maintain appearances. As for no-show jobs in real life, they've existed, particularly in industries or municipalities where oversight was minimal and corruption easy to hide. These roles weren't common, but they weren't mythical either. variations still pop up in the form of time card abuse or ghost workers. It doesn't take a mob to exploit a weak system, just a little audacity and a blind spot in management. In the end, it's all about image. These men think of themselves as upholding values, family, tradition, hard work, while systematically dismantling every one of those ideals in their daily lives. The real hustle isn't crime, it's the illusion of righteousness while cashing in from a lawn chair. Silvio didn't lose control at the poker table. He was supposed to lose it. The real con, it wasn't the cards, it was the performance.
What do you do? Don't engage Silvio in conversation. He can be a sick fuck when he's gambling.
Does it actually make sense to let Silvio play in the executive game, knowing full well he turns into a complete psychopath when he gambles? Isn't the whole point of the game to lure in high rollers with deep pockets, not scare them off with a red-faced mobster flipping tables over cheese? But logic was never the strong suit of this operation. The game's more about vibe than logistics. The thrill of playing cards with dangerous men, behind closed doors, in a motel-looking suite off the highway, where you can blow through 100K, snort a line, cheat on your wife, and no one ever talks about it again. Discretion meets danger. That's the real product.
Where do you get these fucking idiots, huh? Where do you get them? I'm trying to sweeping the cheese. I'm trying to get the... Leave the fucking cheese there, all right?
Silvio's outbursts? Not a bug. A feature. He's part of the draw. The civilians think it's all part of the ambience. Oh, look at the scary mobster yelling at the cheese guy again. It's a parlor trick. A speakeasy gimmick with some F-bombs and marinara thrown in.
Sil, take it easy. I'm losing my balls over here. This fucking moron's playing Hazel.
Tony doesn't just allow it. He orchestrates it. He knows Sil will blow up when prodded. That's why he gives him a little nudge, and then sits back, grinning like he just invented blackjack. It's theater. Controlled chaos. And yeah, Sil cursed at the boss in front of civilians. But nobody flinched, because everyone in that room knew Sil loses his mind over cards. He's a nut, sure, but a predictable one. He's been doing this act for years. The fact that he exploded? Expected. Part of the show. The real surprise would have been him folding quietly and saying, "Good game."
2 boxes came out of my pocket.
He probably isn't even playing with his own money. Most likely staked by the house to keep the action going, to grease the wheels, to make the marks feel like they have a shot. And once they're in deep, guys like Davey, who just want to chase a little excitement, they're in for good. The house always wins on asses one way or another. Even when Sil loses, he wins. 3 boxes of ziti go into the pot. He's paying the rake himself, keeping the table hot and the game running. He's a built-in heater. And yeah, the environment is ridiculous. Ratty hotel room, folding chairs, guys eating lox at 4 a.m. But that's the point. No cameras, no regulators, no synagogue acquaintances catching a respected surgeon losing shekels at a Caesar's blackjack table. Here, they can gamble, drink, curse, snort, and cheat without leaving a trace. That's the real value. That's why they come.
I'll put one in your head.
Hey, don't fucking threaten me, Richie.
Richie. He's the one who nearly ruins the whole thing. When he bursts in and starts threatening people, it breaks the illusion. Suddenly, the danger isn't fun anymore. It's real. That's when the civilians start thinking about their wives, their reputations, their alibis. The game works because the violence is ornamental. Silvio flipping out at someone playing cards on the floor is funny. Richie making threats is not. Ultimately, Silvio is a performer. He's not Paulie, and he's not Richie. He has a leash. He just forgets it when the cards go cold, and that volatility, it's essential to keeping the civilians at the table. The yelling, the melodrama, the tension. It makes them stay, makes them bet, makes them believe they're part of something big. Something real. So yes, Sil's a lunatic, but he's their lunatic, and that lunatic sells a hell of a fantasy. Tony Soprano humiliates his own sister for no reason. Or does he? What if his cruelty to Janice was actually a twisted form of justice? Here's why Tony was right all along.
Well,
I was merely saying
free spirit Janice, rebel without a cause. I sit here mired in her bullshit, trying to be a good son while you're off dropping acid and blowing roadies.
Tony provoking Janice about Harpo at the dinner table wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. He knew exactly what button to push, and he pushed it hard. But as brutal as it was also, in a twisted way, earned. Janice had been playing the long con for years. When she first returned, she immediately brought chaos.
Hey, I thought that was
Where do you get the balls to take out a loan on this house?
She tried to manipulate Tony using their mother's memory, attempted to take a loan against the family home without his consent,
But you gotta take a look at this. Richie, if something's happening to you,
actively sabotaged the sale of that house, and encouraged Richie in his ambition to overthrow Tony. She was, by all accounts, a disaster of a sister. So yes, watching Tony cut through her thin facade of self-improvement was satisfying. He didn't do it because he cared about Harpo or had some moral obligation to call her out. He did it because he was bitter, resentful, and angry, especially at the idea that someone else might be making progress while he remained stuck. But in Janice's case, the motive didn't matter as much as the result. Janice had abandoned her son long ago. The show never gives much detail about Harpo's life or disappearance, but nothing suggests it was beyond Janice's control. It's far more believable that he left because he couldn't deal with her dysfunction anymore. Her tears at the dinner table weren't about motherhood, they were about losing control of the narrative. Tony might not have known the full extent of her role in Richie's attempted betrayal, but he was suspicious. When Richie became more aggressive after getting close to Janice, Tony took notice.
don't hit me. That was an accident.
When Janice called him during her final night with Richie, Tony showed up armed. A clear sign that he didn't trust either of them, whether or not he admitted it to himself. The idea that another close family member might want him dead wasn't lost on him. It had already happened with his mother and with his uncle. Even so, Tony later invited Janice back into the fold. That contradiction highlights the show's deep ambiguity. Tony knows who Janice is. To us, but for the sake of family, appearances, or maybe guilt, he lets her back in. Janice's so-called transformation was short-lived. After a meltdown at her stepdaughter's soccer game, she enrolled in anger management. A few sessions later, she believed she was reformed. Tony, who had spent years in therapy without finding real peace, wasn't buying it. He baited her deliberately, and she failed the test spectacularly. She hadn't changed, she had just pressed pause. Janice's relationship with Bobby was built on manipulation. Her integration into his family was opportunistic at best. Whatever progress she claimed to make was undermined by her long pattern of self-deception and toxic behavior. Tony saw that and exposed it. Yes, it was unfair to Bobby and his kids, but Tony's attack wasn't about them. It was a targeted strike on Janice, whose hypocrisy he couldn't stomach any longer. Seeing her pretending to rise above her nature was too much for him, so he reminded her who she was and who he was. He left that dinner triumphant, like a man who just won a personal war. Meanwhile, Janice broke down and Bobby was left picking up the emotional wreckage. Tony's cruelty wasn't righteous, but it was accurate. Janice had long since lost the right to moral high ground. She spent a lifetime justifying her worst instincts and convincing herself she was the victim. But when confronted with the truth, when her exiled son's name was mentioned, the mask shattered. In the world they live in, that kind of confrontation isn't just expected. It's inevitable. If you respect the grind, hit that like button, 1000 or bust. Comment, subscribe, stay loyal. We'll talk soon.